So in our midweek studies, we're still kind of in between. We're planning to begin Acts soon, but next week we will have Tim and Shirley Parrish with us. We prayed for them pretty often. We'll be praying for them again on Sunday, but they're the ones that are at the small church out in Ely, Nevada. And they reached out to see if it was possible for them to be able to come back maybe in a midweek service and give an update. And so those of you that don't know them will be able to meet them. So we decided instead of starting tonight and then taking a break next week to just wait until 2 weeks from tonight, I believe is when we'll start Acts. So one more in-between night. And the concept and the topic of humility is a topic that's been coming up in various ways. Certainly, it's been on my mind in Proverbs as the last word from introductory wisdom and the virtue that's necessary to move forward in wisdom. Proverbs 15:33 says that the fear of the Lord is the instruction of wisdom, and before honor is humility, before exaltation being brought low. And so the importance of kind of understanding that topic, and then I believe 2 weeks ago it was that Pastor Matt addressed the topic from some of the New Testament perspectives, and really from 3 different texts brought out 3 principles of humility. I'll remind you of them. That is that humility is thinking about ourselves in light of God's truth. So that was thinking soberly, and then acting selflessly for the true benefit of other people, and finally, resting securely under the careful, skilled hand of God. So thinking soberly, acting selflessly, and resting securely. So as these things were on my mind from wisdom literature and the topics that we've been looking at, what came to my mind this week was the ending of Job. And I was maybe musing on the question, what is it then that would prompt these sorts of things in our life? What is it that would prompt a sober thought about myself? Or what is it that would prompt me to be able to think in light of God's truth? What would prompt or motivate a secure rest in His skilled care? And that's the text that came to my mind. It's actually a clear gaze at Him. A clear gaze at God is what might prompt humility in our lives. And so that's where we're going to be looking. Of course, the story is familiar. Job undergoing great suffering, having lost his children and his wealth and his health as well, his friends, his status, his position in society, all of these things that he laments, even perhaps union relationship, nearness with his wife as she encourages him perhaps to curse God and to die. And Job laments even his relationship or loss of relationship, loss of right treatment from God. So I'm thinking some of the last words that Job says in his demand for a hearing would be chapter 31. I'll just read a few verses as an example here, verses 33 through 37. Of chapter 31, it says, "If I have covered my transgressions as Adam, if I'm hiding, by hiding my iniquity in my bosom, because I feared the great multitude and dreaded the contempt of families, so that I kept silence and did not go out the door. Oh, that I had one to hear me. Here is my mark. Oh, that the Almighty would answer me, and that my prosecutor had written a book. Surely I would carry it on my shoulder and bind it on me like a crown. I would declare to him the number of my steps. Like a prince I would approach him." And so Job is really requesting a right audience with God, and even tells God at various points, or tells his friends, that if God would use true scales, then he would be found righteous. And of course, we saw even a few weeks ago in Proverbs that God is the originator of true scales. He's the one that made them and always uses them. So Job is very bold in conversation with his friends about what he deserves before the face of God. And one of those things primarily being an audience and an answer from God. And so I'm sure that given the audience tonight, that the end of Job is probably familiar. So perhaps a devotional reminder of chapters 38 through the end of Job would be helpful for us here. And this text, when God arrives in a whirlwind to Job, I think this inspires humility in a few ways. First, this text exposes our, because we are like Job in the comparison, our utter ignorance even of very ordinary realities. We don't know very much. We think we do. We feel like we do. But we don't know very much. And it reveals our kind of staggering inability to command the world. Look at all these things that are just around you, even that are inanimate. And look how much more powerful they are than you. Look at your inability to really be a good ruler, commander of the world. So little knowledge and little strength, those are things that are true of us. Those are things, even in his righteousness, that were true of Job. So perhaps with Job 38 through 42 in front of us, we should understand our incompetence before requiring an answer from God. That would be humble of us. That would be like thinking soberly. That would be resting securely under the careful, skilled hand of God. Perhaps submission trumps contention. Willingness to follow, willingness to be led, to put my perspective below his own. Perhaps that is better than rising to challenge the one who's bringing circumstances. So perhaps trust trumps a theoretical working knowledge of God's ways. So let's dive in here. I've debated exactly how much of this to read at once. But I think we're just going to read through it. It's very poetic and very engaging. So let's go starting in 38, and we'll read through, and then we'll just, maybe if you can, as we read through, look for some thematic emphases that God is, what are the things that God is asking Job about? What are the points that God is making? And then we'll just go back through and sort of observe them at a pretty quick pace and have some thoughts at the end. So beginning in Job 38, it says, "Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, 'Who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Now prepare yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? To what were its foundations fastened? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy? Or who shut in the sea with doors when it burst forth and issued from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and thick darkness its swaddling band? When I fixed my limit for it and set bars and doors? When I said, 'This far you may come, but no farther, and here your proud waves must stop'? Have you commanded the morning since your days began, and caused the dawn to know its place, that it might take hold of the ends of the earth, and the wicked be shaken out of it? It takes on form like clay under a seal, and stands out like a garment. From the wicked their light is withheld, and the upraised arm is broken. Have you entered the springs of the sea, or have you walked in search of the depths? Have the gates of death been revealed to you, or have you seen the doors of the shadow of death? Have you comprehended the breadth of the earth? Tell me, if you know all this. Where is the way to the dwelling of light, and darkness, where is its place? That you may take it to its territory, that you may know the paths to its home. Do you know it? Because you were born then, or because the number of your days is great? Have you entered the treasury of snow, or have you seen the treasury of hail, which I have reserved for the time of trouble, for the day of battle and war? By what way is light diffused, or the east wind scattered over the earth? Who has divided a channel for the overflowing water, or a path for the thunderbolt, to cause it to rain on a land where there is no one, a wilderness in which there is no man, to satisfy the desolate waste and cause to spring forth the growth of tender grass? Has the rain a father? Or who has begotten the drops of dew? From whose womb comes the ice and the frost of heaven? Who gives it birth? The waters harden like stone, and the surface of the deep is frozen. Can you bind the cluster of the Pleiades, or loose the belt of Orion? Can you bring out Mazzaroth in its season, or can you guide the great bear with its cubs? Do you know the ordinances of the heavens? Can you set their dominion over the earth? Can you lift up your voice to the clouds, that an abundance of water may cover you? Can you send out lightnings that there they may go, or that they may go and say to you, here we are? Who has put wisdom in the mind, or who has given understanding to the heart? Who can number the clouds by wisdom, or who can pour out the bottles of heaven when the dust hardens in clumps and the clods cling together? Can you hunt the prey for the lion, or satisfy the appetite of the young lions, when they crouch in their dens or lurk in their lairs to lie in wait? Who provides food for the raven when its young ones cry to God and wander about for lack of food? Do you know the time when the wild goats bear young? Or can you mark when the deer gives birth? Can you number the months that they fulfill? Or do you know the time when they bear young? They bow down, they bring forth their young, they deliver their offspring. Their young ones are healthy, they grow strong with grain. They depart and do not return to them. Or who set the wild donkey free? Who loosed the bonds of the onager? Whose home I have made the wilderness, and the barren land his dwelling. He scorns the tumult of the city. He does not heed the shouts of the driver. The range of the mountains is his pasture, and he searches after every green thing. Will the wild ox be willing to serve you? Will he bed by your manger? Can you bind the wild ox in the furrow with ropes? Or will he plow the valleys behind you? Will you trust him because his strength is great? Or will he leave your labor to him? Will you trust him to bring home your grain and gather it to your threshing floor? The wings of the ostrich wave proudly, but are her wings and pinions like the kindly stork's? For she leaves her eggs on the ground and warms them in the dust. She forgets that a foot may crush them, or that a wild beast may break them. She treats her young harshly as though they were not hers. Her labor is in vain, without concern, because God deprived her of wisdom and did not endow her with understanding. When she lifts herself on high, she scorns the horse and its rider. Have you given the horse strength? Have you clothed his neck with thunder? Can you frighten him like a locust? His majestic snorting strikes terror. He paws in the valley and rejoices in his strength. He gallops into the clash of arms. He mocks at fear and is not frightened, nor does he turn back from the sword. The quiver rattles against him, the glittering spear and javelin. He devours the distance with fierceness and rage, nor does he come to a halt because the trumpet has sounded. At the blast of the trumpet, he says, "Aha!" He smells the battle from afar, the thunder of captains and shouting. Does the hawk fly by your wisdom and spread its wings toward the south? Does the eagle mount up at your command and make its nest on high? On the rock it dwells and resides, on the crag of the rock and the stronghold. From there it spies out the prey. Its eyes observe from afar. Its young ones suck up blood, and where the slain are, there it is. Moreover, the Lord answered to Job and said, "Shall the one who contends with the Almighty correct him? He who rebukes God, let him answer it." Let's pause there. That's the first speech from God. So it's dramatic, it's poetic, it's powerful. It's simultaneously very strong and very gentle. It's gentle in the fact that it's all questions. It's all questions. He's not really he's making assertions, but he doesn't make them verbally. He's really just asking Job, here's some things to consider. You can answer the questions to these things, but it's not, the answers obviously don't make Job look good. They don't make him look strong and powerful. They don't make him look knowledgeable and like he has a valid complaint. It does the opposite very clearly. So it's humbling. in that regard. But as we go through, let's just take it a little bit piece by piece. The first theme is God as maker, and that's found in verses 4 through 15. So as we look there, what's the first section of things that God has made in verses 4 through 7? Okay, creation in Genesis 1, very specifically kind of the stuff, like the earth, right? The matter that he's gathered to be the foundations of the earth. And so he's asking the question, were you there? Like, where were you when I was doing this? So it's an assertion about his eternality, that he's the one who began these things. He uses a lot of building language here. He's the one that's laying the foundation, measuring things and stretching things out a bit and doing all this organization and structuring. So he's saying, I made it. Where were you? Not there. So the first thing that God says he made is the earth itself. And then what does he make in 8 through 11? All the waters, right? The sea itself. He uses so much poetic language through this. He describes the sea as being born from the womb. And he says, who, in verse 9, like, who is it that gave the sea its, like, baby clothes? Who is it that put swaddling clothes on, made darkness, the swaddling bands of the water? Who is it that made these, like, rules for the toddler sea? When he's like, nope, this is as far as you can go, and you can't go any further than that. Like, here's the lines of the waters and the earth. He's like, who is it that raised the world? Certainly not Job. So God's made the earth and the sea. And then verses 12 through 15, the morning is made. There's kind of some interesting language in this one. Verses 12 through 15. Have you told the morning what to do? Are you the one that told the dawn what to do? So that it could, there's like this violent shaking language. It's like the morning has the ability almost to like shake out the night, and it just scatters everywhere, and it scatters even the wicked away. There's shadow language in verse 14, like right as the morning begins, that there's almost like folds of a garment to what's happening on the earth. She's like, have you made the earth? Were you there when the sea was measured? And I gave it little clothes and made rules for it and boundary lines. Were you there when the mornings shook off the night, shook off the darkness, shook off wickedness, and stretched out? No. You have nothing to do with the origin story of this world. You have nothing to do with the making of this world. But not only did God make it, now he argues that he rules it. So he continues interacting with it, first in all of these inanimate things. So he's the king of nature, of the inanimate nature. So like the depths and the expanses in verses 16 through 18. Challenges Job. Do you know how low the lowest points go? Have you been to the bottom of the ocean? Well, no, we haven't been. We can't go there. Have you been to the bottom of life? Have you been to the grave? No, you haven't been there. Have you been? How about wide? If you haven't gone down, have you gone wide? Can you comprehend? Are you able to measure the width, the breadth of the earth? And I'm open to answers. He's like, you can, if you know the answer to it, you can say it. I'm listening. Of course, he doesn't know the answer, But not only does he rule the depths and the expanses, he also rules in verses 19 through 21, the light and the dark. And he talks about their homes, Where's the house of light and the house of dark? Are you able to sort of take it home when it needs to go home? After the day is done, are you able to take the light and tuck it into bed? No, you don't know how to do that. I know how to do that. Or when it's morning time, can you take the dark and just tuck it in for the day? And you don't know where it even lives. You don't know how this works. You don't know where these things are coming from. If you were born then maybe you would have, but you weren't born then. That's verse 21. The number of your days is pretty small compared to the number of days even of the earth. Okay, so he's the king of inanimate nature in the depths and expanses, and the light and the dark, and then a kind of extensive section on the weather. So this is some of my favorite language in these verses. He describes everything in heavens, like the hail and the snow, as his armory or his treasury. Like all of these things that God has stored up in heaven, like really cool places if you could go and visit and he could show you all these things that he has stored up for the day of war, like for the time of judgment. He's like, if you could see what I have the capability to unleash, he's like, you'd be impressed. Have you been to my secret storehouses of like my armory, my treasury? He said, no, you haven't been there. You know how the light works and how the wind works? No. Verses 26 and 27 are a bit like if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around, does it still make a sound? If the rain falls where no one is, does grass still grow? Yeah, it does. Actually, this is one of God's delights, is to do things even in places where no one is because he can. There's so many places that we haven't been and so many things that we can't do where God's still just like working wonders and we're like doing his delightful work in places that we, humanity, have not even touched or seen or probably couldn't even imagine. We're thinking cosmically. He talks about the little family of water in verses 28 and 29. Who's the rain's dad? Who's the ice's mom? Who's the one who caused the drops of dew to be born? Not you. The water family isn't parented by you. So all of these things, the depths, the expanses, light and dark, all different kinds of weather. And then 31 through 33, he talks about the stars. And it's pretty impressive how ancient the concept of even seeing pictures in the sky in the stars is. Like, this is an old idea. And, of course, they've been moving across the sky, like in verse 32, for a very long time. God's been doing this for forever. And he even references probably some of the constellations as Job knew them. Can you guide the bear walking across the night sky? Nope, you don't know how to do that. Can you take the belt off that hunter dude? Nope. You don't know how to do that. Do you know how it works? Do you know the rules of heaven? Then he talks about the floods and rain in verses 34 through 38. Verse 36 is key. So he's really hearkening back to his accusation of Job in verse 2. That Job has spoken in a way that, to a degree, was dark. Because it was not illuminated by knowledge. He wasn't speaking knowledgeably in much of what he said. And God says, well, where does that come from? And this is explicitly said in chapter 28. We've taken a look at that before. Where does wisdom come from? No one can find it because its source is exclusively reserved as a divine source. He's the only one that can open up heaven and pour out wisdom into somebody's heart. So all of these things, he's like, I'm the king of even that which can't respond. And I'm the king of that which does respond. I'm the king of animate nature too. All of the animal kingdoms here. So the end of chapter 38, he talks about his provision. Food for the animals, food for the lions, food for the ravens. The Gospels pick this up. Jesus picked this up in his teaching. God's treatment of the animals is evidence of his greater and kinder and gentler treatment of us because of the value comparison between animals and us. God's made everything. He's the king of inanimate nature. He's the king of animate nature, demonstrated by his provision. Chapter 39 goes into procreation of animals. He has knowledge and rule and establishment in those things in verses 1 through 4. He even talks about in verses 3 and 4, really just like quick poem about animals being born and then growing up and leaving and not returning to their parents, and this just happening over and over and over. So in his provision for the animals and in their systems of procreation. And then he talks about five different animals at length, and kind of draws out one particular characteristic of this animal. So things that God does in the animal kingdom that we really have nothing to do with. First is that he can give them like exultant freedom. He's comparing a wild donkey to a domesticated donkey. He's like, you know which one's having a better time? My one. Like the one that I have rules for. Because all of like all the country people would like this, right? He's like, he hates the sound of the city. He hates all the shouts of the driver and being told what to do and all the leather and the reins and just like that. That's the worst. Donkeys don't like that, right? They want to be roaming free. So he gives them like freedom, and then there's this like unrestrained strength. He kind of contrasts a wild ox, perhaps even referencing another animal that's not a domesticated, like an animal that's being used by humans. Maybe I don't. There's different suggestions, like an elephant or something like, or a rhino or something like that. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But the difference, like, can you go take one of those wild creatures and like just make it do whatever you want? No, that's going to take some time, and he's not having a good time when he's with you. Like he would much rather be out and about living his own life. He's like, can you use your strength? Like, compare your strength to the strength of some wild animal. He's like, you don't have strength compared to that. You think he's going to listen to you just because you're yelling at him, just because you're like waving a stick and you have a piece of leather? He's not going to listen to you. Yeah, I can't wait to come and walk around in a circle and tread your grain. That would be great. No, I prefer the strength from God, the freedom from God. And then the ostrich one is weird. And I actually think that's, I haven't taken like an incredibly close look, but I think that's actually the point. Like, look at what a weird thing I can make. It's like super stupid and also super fast. And it's a bird, but it doesn't fly. It's like, I can do whatever I want. Because she has these like, look at the wings, waving proudly. But that doesn't have anything to do with what an ostrich does. And then she's like, sort of, like she leaves her eggs on the ground and like leaves them, which looks like a bad thing, but it's probably a good thing because she's so stupid that she wouldn't be a good mom like there. She'd probably just trample her eggs. Anyways, why? Well, because God made her dumb. Like God took away, he didn't give her a big degree of wisdom. He just gave like her legs a big degree of speed. Like so much so that everything looks like really unimpressive about the ostrich until verse 18. And it's like, but she's faster than a horse. Like she's cool in some ways. She's sort of odd. So he has this creative liberty with the creation. And then this is the one domesticated animal mentioned, and it's a war horse. So a horse specifically trained for war. And I think that's important, having been around horses for a while, because you definitely can frighten untrained horses pretty easily. So this is like the king's horse. The one that's like vicious, violent, angry, like chomping at the bit, can't wait to go, run fearlessly, into the fight. Even once the battle's over, he's just still going. He's still ready to fight. Look at this fearless strength that God has made as potential in this animal. And then flight in verses 26 through 30. That doesn't happen by Job's wisdom. So all of these things, like God's saying, not only did I make it, I'm not just arguing that I'm the creator. I'm arguing that I'm intimately involved in every detail of everything, both inanimate and animate creation. That which responds, like audibly or with eating or procreating, and that which doesn't, like the stars and the rain and all of it. I have complete knowledge of. I could answer any question that you could ever ask about anything. I have it like without even thinking. I know it. It's mine. I'm using it. I'm doing stuff with it. And so at the end of all of this, God says, so you said you had something to say to me. Go ahead. Never mind. I don't think I had anything, Like all of those things that he felt so strongly, all of those things that he knew because he had experienced it, he had seen it. I know my heart, like I know my life, I know what I've done, I know my actions, I know what I deserve, I know. And how dare anyone else come and sit and tell me otherwise? And God says, okay, you can tell me after I just, prompt you with a few questions. And that was all that he needed. Job says, no, I don't have anything to say. I lay my hand over my mouth. I spoke at one point in time, but I'm not going to speak now. I'm not going any further. I'll pause here for a second to maybe try to make a point of connection. I attempted to make on the Sunday where I preached Proverbs 16. I don't think I did a very good job there of explaining the the connection I was trying to make to James 1 about swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Now that's very present in wisdom literature. It's very present in a wise life. But I do believe that in some of these contexts, it is initially narrowly applied to the Word of God. Swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, as it relates to the Word of God. And then the broader principles are absolutely true. Just like, you have two ears and one mouth for a reason, that kind of a thing. Like, listen more than you speak. And well, yeah, someone without self-control, they're like a city without walls. That's not a good thing. But even here, don't you see in Job's response to the Word of God, those three things? Swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, even wrath undone. And that is, I think, the immediate context of James 1. I think it was present in Proverbs 16 in all three places, like related to the word, someone who hears the wise words, and that's going to teach their mouth. It's going to put a gate on their mouth. They'll be slow to speak and careful in what they say. And it prompts a willingness to wait before making decisions, even once hearing the Word of God, even when maybe reading a verse, even when responding to a sermon, even anything like that. Like when we hear God speak and we just have these thoughts, I know what I think. I know how I should respond. I know, well, yeah, but you're like, whoa. Just wait. Think about it for a second. Be slow. Slow to correct God. Slow to know better than God. Slow to be angry at what God has chosen to do. And that's Job's response right here. Those three things. Quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. So that's kind of the food for thought. Is that there's that connection. We have 15 minutes. We'll read. Let's read through the second speech. And again, just kind of I'll do a quick overview, making the primary point that God is seeking to make. So God answers again. Job says, I'm not going to speak again. God says, okay, I'm going to speak again. I have one more thing to say. Now prepare yourself like a man. It's my turn to ask you some questions, and you shall answer me. Verse 8. Would you indeed annul my judgment? Would you condemn me that you may be justified? Have you an arm like God, or can you thunder with a voice like his? Then, if so, adorn yourself with majesty and splendor, and array yourself with glory and beauty. Disperse the rage of your wrath. Look on everyone who is proud and humble him, and look on everyone who is proud and bring him low. Tread down the wicked in their place, hide them in the dust together, bind their faces in hidden darkness. Then I will also confess to you that your own right hand can save you. And then there's these two great beasts that God talks about. Look now at the behemoth, which I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox. See now, his strength is in his hips, and his power is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are tightly knit. His bones are like beams of bronze. His ribs like bars of iron. He is the first of the ways of God. Only he who made him can bring near his sword. Surely the mountains yield food for him, and all the beasts of the field play there. He lies under the lotus trees in a covert of reeds and marsh. The lotus trees cover him with their shade. The willows by the brook will surround him. Indeed, the river may rage, yet he is not disturbed. He is confident, though the Jordan gushes into his mouth, though he takes it in the eyes, or one pierce his nose with a snare. Can you draw out Leviathan with a hook? Sorry, I think that verse 24 is actually with the Leviathan. So it was the end in 23, and then he starts talking about Leviathan. Though he has like this hook in his eyes or with his nose, can you draw him out? Can you get him out, even if you get him on the line? Or snare his tongue with a line in which you lower? Can you put a reed through his nose, or pierce his jaw with a hook? Will he make many supplications to you? Will he speak softly to you? Will he make a covenant with you? Will you take him as a servant forever? Will you play with him as with a bird, or will you leash him for your maidens? Will your companions make a banquet of him? Will they apportion him among the merchants? Can you fill his skin with harpoons or his head with fishing spears? Lay your hand on him, remember the battle, and never do it again. Indeed, any hope of overcoming him is false. Shall one not be overwhelmed at the sight of him? No one is so fierce that he would dare stir him up. Who then is able to stand against me? Who has preceded me that I should pay him? Everything under heaven is mine. I will not conceal his limbs, his mighty power, or his graceful proportions. Who can remove his outer coat? Who can approach him with a double bridle? Who can open the doors of his face with his terrible teeth all around? His rows of scales are his pride, shut up tightly as with a seal. One is so near to another that no air can come between them. They're joined to one another. They stick together and cannot be parted. His sneezings flash forth light. There's a cool one. And his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Out of his mouth go burning lights. Smoke goes out of his nostrils as from a boiling pot and burning rushes. His breath kindles coals, and a flame goes out of his mouth. Strength dwells in his neck, and sorrow dances before him. The folds of his flesh are joined together. They are firm on him and cannot be moved. His heart is as hard as stone, even as hard as the lower millstone. When he raises himself up, the mighty are afraid. Because of his crashings, they are beside themselves. Though the sword reaches him, it cannot avail, nor does spear, dart, or javelin. He regards iron as straw, and bronze as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make him flee. Sling stones become like stubble to him. Darts are regarded as straw. He laughs at the threat of javelins. His undersides are like sharp potsherds. He spreads pointed marks in the mire. He makes the deep boil like a pot. He makes the sea like a pot of ointment. He leaves a shining wake behind him. One would think the deep had white hair. On earth there is nothing like him, which is made without fear. He beholds every high thing. He is king over all the children of pride. Okay, so an initial sort of address and then two great beasts, right? So God asks him, he says, oh, so you're going to judge the judge. Okay, verse 8. Because you're powerful like I'm powerful. Because you can see like I can see. Because you can do like I can do. Okay, no, go ahead. Why don't you judge the earth? Put on your, armor and put on your glory and beauty, and then go get angry at all the bad stuff. Go bring down those who are proud and just trample them and hide them in the dust, and then I'll be like, wow, that was impressive. You did a good job. You can save yourself more than I thought. And obviously that's not going to be the case. Job can't be the righteous judge, even though he has a strong sense of righteousness. And so now God just gives these two animals as a reiteration of the point he was making before. So Behemoth first, and there's a lot of debate over what these creatures are. I think it's a bit ridiculous to think that they are like a hippo and a crocodile, which is what some people will say. They're not that impressive, like they're strong, don't get me wrong, but I don't think God would be talking about a hippo quite like this. And then other people will say, well, then they're just like, mythical creatures. They don't exist. I think they're fire-breathing dragons. No. That's kind of what it sounds like in the second one. I think they're great ancient creatures, for sure. Whether they're dead or alive now, well, I don't know. Have you been to the depths of the sea? No. Do you know what's down there? No. So don't swim in the midnight zone. No. And so I don't know exactly what these creatures are, but they're great and terrible creatures that are way greater than the greatest of us. And that's one of the primary points that he makes, is the power of both of them. Like unimaginable power compared to a human being. And that's the first part of both. So let's take Behemoth first. Verses 15 through 18 are all about how strong he is. And then verses 20 and 24 are all about how safe his power makes him. The strongest person doesn't walk around scared of all the little people. Like the greatest beast on earth does not walk around scared of humans. He takes a nap whenever he wants. And so in the very center of the poem, we have verse 19. And that's the theology. That's the instruction that God is after. He says, and yet, you remember what I said about everything in the first address. I'm the great maker, I'm the great ruler. Well, you take the height of that creation. I made it, I rule it. He's one of my first creatures. And I can put my sword anywhere I want on him. I can take him out anytime. No trouble. Flick of the wrist. Because I made him. So, maker and ruler of Behemoth is God. And then verse 41, maybe starting just the verse before at the end of 40, we have a couple, basically, God just pairs Leviathan in conversation with a few different groups of people. So first he pairs Leviathan in conversation with Job. He's like, okay, big, strong fisherman, why don't you go throw your line in the water and pull Leviathan out? Since you're all that. No, you don't even want to. Did the great whalers actually want to get a harpoon in the biggest whale? That probably was the end. It maybe makes for a good story, or maybe you never get to tell the story. So go ahead and try. And then he's like, what do you think he's going to do? Start whimpering? And he's just start, oh, please don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. Anything you say, anything to not have you come and hunt me. You can put a leash on me. You can take and trot me out, show me to your kids. No, nothing like that. Are you going to eat him? Are you going to chop him up? No, you're not doing any of that. So Job really can't do anything. And if he did, then verse 8 says it's probably the last thing that he's going to do. You better make a good attempt because you're never going to fight this monster again. And then later on, in verses 13 through 24, he just talks about Leviathan himself, and once again, the power that Leviathan has, and it is a key feature in that text that he's when he sneezes, there's fire that comes out his mouth, and burning lights and sparks and all this stuff. So that's Leviathan about Leviathan, and then he pairs Leviathan to the greatest of all humanity. So it's so maybe that's not you, Job, but let's take the strongest soldier or the greatest army that is. What about Leviathan against them? And they're terrified. Verse 25. Even the mighty, the Gibborim, they're afraid. So once again, Leviathan is powerful, and Leviathan, because of his power, is very secure. He's very safe. So what's the theology here? Same thing as before. verses 10 and 11. Who then is able to stand against me? Who has preceded me that I should pay him or regard him? Everything under heaven is mine. So once again, when God says, like, did Leviathan come before me? No, I came before Leviathan. Implication, I made Leviathan. And so, who's the boss? Well, he's mine. Leviathan's mine. It's the same point in both of them, that God made and rules the greatest of all creatures, which is the same argument, really, to us in a superlative sense that he made before. So, how does Job respond then in chapter 42? We'll just read the first 6 verses. And then Job answered the Lord and said, basically, I get it. I know that you can do everything. And anything you want to do, you will do. No purpose of yours can be withheld from your hand. You asked, who is this who hides counsel without knowledge? That was me. I uttered what I didn't understand. I was talking about things too wonderful for me, things I didn't know what I was talking about. Listen, please, and let me speak. He said, I will question you, and you shall answer me. And he simply says, I've heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Therefore I abhor, and I repent in dust and ashes. I'm sorry for all that stuff I said that I shouldn't have said. I can see that, I knew it before, but now I can see it very clearly. There's no one like you. You're incredibly powerful. You're the God of gods. And whatever you want to do, you'll do, and that's good. And so it's often pointed out, rightly so, that God never answers Job's questions. Instead, he just paints a very clear picture of himself and his authority and his rulership to Job. And those things very quickly were sufficient for Job's willingness to be humble, for his willingness to submit himself to the mighty hand of God. And may the same thing be true of us. May our gaze of Christ, our knowledge of God, function in our lives to produce humility, so that we would be willing, as we have clearly seen him, maybe even in as we work through Exodus, as we see the mighty hand of God, his ability to be more powerful than all the great powers, and his ability to deliver, and his ability to lead and guide, and all this stuff. May that prompt, whatever you say, I will hear. Wherever you take me, I will go. You're the good guide. You'll take me the right places, whether it hurts or it's sweet, like Job, whether I have people following me or everyone makes fun of me, whether I have all this stuff or I have no stuff, I have a great wife, I don't have, and whatever it is, I'll go where you take me. So may we have that same spirit as well. I wanted to sing at the end because some of these songs, we could sing them at the beginning, but now we have a little bit more context and the reason for them. So had more than we'll do picked out, but let's do 2 songs. Let's start with 26. I sing the mighty power of God. We'll have this as our response and reflection.